The president of El Salvador is offering to take in deportees and U.S. criminals at its prisons, including American citizens. There are many legal questions surrounding the offer, but if the Trump administration accepts, some of those individuals could be sent to one of the country's maximum security prisons.
Trust me when I say this isn't just a prison, it's a human warehouse. A place where criminals are stripped away of their identities, hope, and the rest of humanity. Today, I'll show you the unseen footage from the inside of El Salvador's mega prison, also known as CECOT, the prison realm where the world's most notorious criminals are kept. This is the hidden reality that the Salvador government doesn't want you to see.
Another move by the Trump administration is raising some legal concerns today. Besides trying to deport migrants accused of violent crimes, President Trump is now suggesting convicted Americans also be sent to prisons abroad.
Do you remember how much they were paying you to kill people?
Nosotros, cada quien tiene un sueldo. Bueno, ganaba casi 1,500 pesos a la semana por cuidar el barrio.
El Salvador, a name that was once known as the country of gang violence, crime, and fear, has now transformed into one of the safest countries in the Western Hemisphere. Now that sounds almost unbelievable, doesn't it? After all, just a few years ago, this place was considered a lost cause, a nation drowning in lawlessness, where stepping into the wrong neighborhood could mean the difference between life and death. So, what changed? How did a country that was once ruled by ruthless gangs turn into a place where people can finally walk the streets without fearing for their lives? Well, the answer lies in one man, Nayib Bukele, the current president of El Salvador. Bukele, a young and fearless politician, wasted no time after taking office on June 1st, 2019. From the moment he stepped in, he declared an all-out war against the notorious gangs like MS-13 and Barrio 18 that had been holding his country hostage for decades. These weren't just small-time criminals. They were the pinnacle of terror, running entire communities like their personal kingdoms. Before Bukele's crackdown, life in El Salvador was a nightmare. Every neighborhood had its own rules, not set by the government, but by the gangs instead. These tattooed men controlled everything: who could enter, who could leave, who lived, and who died. They abused their power so much that even the police feared that if they did anything to make these gangs angry, they, including their families, would disappear from existence. Some say they were like the Mexican cartels, but many argue they were even worse. Year after year, the country recorded thousands of brutal murders, making it one of the deadliest places on earth. Theft, kidnappings, drug trafficking, and gruesome executions were boastfully carried out like everyday routines. Families lived in constant fear, and for many, the only way out was to flee from the country itself. The violence forced countless Salvadorans to leave their homeland in search of safety, with most of them heading north to the United States. El Salvador wasn't just a dangerous country. It had become a place so unlivable that survival is impossible unless you join a gang, which is no good as well. But as they say, every reign of terror must come to an end. And for these criminals, their time was finally up. President Bukele came into power with a single mission in mind: to clean his country of these gangs, no matter the cost. He launched the most aggressive crackdown in El Salvador's history, giving security forces full authority to arrest anyone suspected of gang involvement. It didn't matter if you were a high-ranking leader or just a low-level recruit. If you had any ties to the gangs, you were getting locked up. And here's the shocking part. There were no trials, no court dates, no second chances. The mere suspicion of gang affiliation was enough to get you thrown into prison. This move was indeed very controversial, but there is no denying how effective it was.
the right way. You take your best government and you put him to govern Afghanistan and tell them, okay, you govern Afghanistan the same way you govern this European country. You'll be dead in a week because you cannot govern Afghanistan like you govern Europe. We don't tell you that you shouldn't have a monarchy. I mean, we're fine with your monarchy. We love your monarchy. It's fine. We don't say, oh, you shouldn't have a monarchy and you shouldn't have hereditary titles. Why? Because it's your country. You can do whatever you want with it. In the 80s, the war. You had a fight with the Soviet Union. Had nothing to do with us. What did you do? You financed El Salvador to fight a war between us, between brothers.
Innocent people were sadly caught in the crossfire and wrongfully arrested simply because they were at the wrong place at the wrong time. But Bukele was firm in his belief that all of his aggressive actions were necessary to save his country, even if it meant a few sacrifices. Bukele believed that mercy for criminals had been the country's downfall for too long, and now was the time for a zero-tolerance approach. El Salvador, which was once terrorized by unthinkable violence, saw its crime rate deplete at a significant rate. Streets that were once ruled by gangsters are now safe for families and businesses. People no longer live in constant fear, and the country's transformation has been nothing short of a miracle. But Bukele knew that arrests alone wouldn't be enough. The gang network ran deep, connecting them with corrupt officials, police officers, and politicians who had been quietly benefiting from the chaos for years. So Bukele did the unthinkable. He built a prison unlike any other, a place designed not for rehabilitation, but for complete and total containment. A mega prison where escape is impossible and death is the only way out. And that's where we get to the real story. Stay with me as I take you deep inside El Salvador's mega prison, where the world's most ruthless criminals are now nothing more than caged animals. Welcome to CECOT, also known as the Terrorism Confinement Center. It's El Salvador's mega prison, which is unlike any other high-security facility, infamously known as the Fortress of Punishment. This massive facility was built for the sole reason of eradicating each and every gang member from the streets and containing them in an inescapable oblivion. If you've ever wondered where the worst of the worst end up, this is it. From petty thieves and drug dealers to ruthless murderers and human traffickers, CECOT is home to criminals of all levels. And for them, this is not just prison, it's a living nightmare. It's the kind of place where the phrase, "hell is empty and all the devils are here,"
hell is empty, and all the devils are here,
fits perfectly, because once you're inside, there's no getting out. CECOT is the final destination for thousands of gang members, a concrete tomb where they will live out the rest of their days, buried under a system that shows them no mercy. No parole, no second chances, only endless years surrounded by fellow gang members, all trapped under one roof, waiting for death to take them. The facility is located in Tecoluca, a municipality in the San Vicente department of El Salvador, away from any residential area, making it quite hard for any outsiders to approach it without being monitored miles away. It's no wonder that CECOT has gained global attention. People all over the world are fascinated by the sheer scale and intensity of this prison. Now, let's talk numbers. The CECOT facility spans approximately 410 acres of land, with the physical complex covering roughly 57 acres. The prison itself covers an area of approximately 236,000 square meters, giving the government more than enough space to contain all the country's trash in one single place. The prison is sealed off by 4 towering walls, each nearly 10 feet high and almost 2 feet thick, built for one purpose: keeping everyone inside. And if that's not intimidating enough, these walls are topped with razor-sharp barbed wire, the kind that makes you think twice before even dreaming of an escape. But let's say you manage to climb the wall without being spotted. The second you touch that barbed wire, a brutal 15,000-volt shock will make sure you regret it. Somehow, if you're a genius who figures out a way past the electrified wire, there's another nasty surprise waiting on the other side: gravel spread across the ground, designed to make enough noise and alert the guards the moment you land. And here's the thing about CECOT's guards: they don't hesitate. If you don't surrender immediately, they will open fire. Moreover, there are a total of 19 guard towers, 7 of which are located outside the facility, while 12 are located inside. And each tower is equipped with 7 guards armed with both long and short-range weapons. The main force to control the inmates inside the facility consists of about 1,000 guards, 600 soldiers, and about 250 police officers, making it an entire army, all of them with covered faces so no inmate could discover their identity. The surveillance cameras are everywhere, monitored by a full team, capturing each and every move of the inmates and even the guards. There's no area in the facility that isn't under surveillance either by a guard or through a CCTV camera. Long story short, there's no escaping CECOT. You don't leave once you're in. There's no way out. Now, let's talk about the interior and what the prison looks like from the inside. There are a total of 8 main cell blocks, each of which is as large as an entire football field. Now, these blocks are further divided into modules, and each module is known to contain only 2 toilets, along with 2 basins, and somewhere around 80 metal bunk beds stacked up to 4 levels, while many of the inmates sleep on a floor mat. It's worth knowing that each cell contains hundreds of inmates, and each of them is only given 6.5 square feet, which is way less than you can imagine. From taking a bath to taking a dump, you have to do everything while 100 eyes watch you do it and probably even smell it. With less space, inmates tend to fight with each other, but surprisingly, in CECOT, you get to see the worst of the worst criminals act like well-mannered gentlemen. Isn't that odd? Well, that's actually because of the punishment they'll be getting if they break any rules. What you're seeing right now is undoubtedly one of the darkest places you can find on the planet. These are the solitary confinement cells, aka the detention zone. These cells have only one source of light, and that is through a very small hole in the ceiling, which is useless during the night. There's a concrete slab for sleeping, a basin, and a toilet for the inmate that'll be staying here. The inmates who act badly are sent here and spend days and even weeks inside these cells. At first, this might seem like no big deal, but in reality, the complete isolation and darkness can make you go insane in just a few days at max. Even the toughest cookies can crumble here and beg for mercy, but in CECOT, you ain't getting any of it. Unlike other prisons that have a designated menu for the inmates, here in this facility, there's only one menu, and it won't change even in the slightest until you take your last breath. The diet for these inmates consists of rice, beans, pasta, tortillas, and occasional hard-boiled eggs and pastries. They'll be fed the same thing 3 times a day and are not given any utensils as a precaution, so these inmates won't use them as weapons. Even in these cells, where guards monitor them 24/7, there are still 2 levels. The ground level and the second level, where guards armed with guns are secured from above. So, in case there's a riot, they could get a clear shot at these inmates, taking them down instantly. But if things get out of hand, the prison has a designated area where all the riot equipment, including guns, shotguns, and riot shields, is kept. Everything is there to bring the situation under control. To make the inmates more visible, they're forced to wear all white shirts, and their heads are also shaved every 5 days. Now, not everyone in these cells is a gang member. There are other criminals as well that are kept here but in different blocks, and are treated according to the level of danger they pose. But the gang members, especially the MS-13, are specifically kept in one place, and they're not allowed to go anywhere, not even to a ground where they could go play and exercise. But just to keep them alive, each prisoner is allowed 1 hour per week outside of their cells, still in the block, to exercise and engage in minor religious activities. Throughout the day and night, the lights inside these blocks never turn off, which is kind of torture as it starts to hurt your eyes quickly. At CECOT, the armed forces bring these inmates to the facility in shackles that bind their hands and feet together, forcing them to bow while moving. The guards make them run, always keeping them confused, making sure they don't have time to do anything funny that they might regret later. Once these inmates are inside, they're checked thoroughly from inside the mouth to even the private parts, in case they're hiding drugs or any weapons. Now it's time for their check-in at the registration office. Here, the officials don't even bother asking these inmates their names. Rather, they take their fingerprints and photographs straight up for identification. This is mainly because these criminals tend to keep their identities secret and use fake names to mislead the system. Once everything is done, they're finally sent to their jail cells, where they'll be spending their entire lives. Most of these inmates are very young. Some are as young as 20 years old, meaning they step into the world of crime when they haven't even turned 18. Most of these boys were forced to join gangs, and some joined them just to look cool and feel the power of deciding who would live and who would die. Either way, with the crimes these inmates have committed and the lives they have taken from the mothers, you just can't feel pity for them. One of the ways you can know how ruthless these inmates are is through their tattoos. The higher the number is, the higher their rank and the number of crimes are. But the most terrifying is the teardrop tattoo just beneath the left eye, signifying that they've committed a murder. If an inmate has 3 teardrop tattoos, it means that they've murdered so many that they lost count. Now that's just pure evil, as they're proud of what they did. You might wonder how the guards who monitor these inmates live. Well, for them, there are all sorts of facilities available, such as resting quarters, clean bathrooms, lounges, lockers, and a full-fledged gym. This is something the CECOT guards totally deserve, as being close to such ruthless devils all the time must wear them out both physically and mentally. Moreover, CECOT has independent water and electricity systems, further isolating it from the surrounding community. It's an entire city of criminals, carefully designed to ensure that no one ever sees freedom again. Now that we've told you how ultra carefully these inmates are monitored 24/7, what about the visitors who come to the prison just to record and explore the lives of these inmates? Well, even for them, CECOT makes sure that they always remain under pressure. Let's just say you're a news reporter or a YouTuber who wants to document this mega prison. Well, first of all, it's very likely you'll get no chance of entering its walls. It requires extensive documentation along with a background check until you're granted permission to visit it. Well, even after that, you're still not allowed to roam the facility freely. In fact, upon entrance, a masked guard checks your belongings, camera equipment, and even your entire body, both by physically touching and via a futuristic X-ray machine that even shows inside your organs in case you're hiding something there. Once you're all cleared, a high-ranking guard will be appointed to you, who will tour the facility from the riot rooms to the guard quarters, and finally, the prison blocks. Inside the blocks, you're strictly prohibited from crossing the designated yellow line. Moreover, you're also not allowed to talk to any prisoner, and if you try anything suspicious, they'll either kick you out or take you to the interrogation room. The guards here are very strict, and we can't blame them. After all, they're dealing with the most notorious killers on the planet. These inmates have strong connections, and they'll do anything to get in touch with their friends who are still roaming outside. Sometimes these inmates even use their lips while looking at the camera so that their friends can get their messages. That's why the guards make sure that you either blur that inmate's mouth or don't include that clip at all. It's a very well-maintained environment, something that has never been seen before. One of the most intriguing aspects of this mega prison is the fact that it was built in less than a year, from late 2022 to early 2023. The construction cost a total of $100 million, but for Bukele, it was an investment that was totally worth it, and we can see why, as it has finally set such a miserable country on the path of success. With the capacity to hold up to 40,000 inmates, CECOT is by far one of the largest prisons in the world. But here's something very intriguing. The prison is probably already over capacity, even though it's believed that there are only about 14,532 inmates. But that's kind of confidential, as the real number remains unknown. The crackdown on gangs has been so intense that the number of inmates inside likely exceeds the official limits. In fact, the number of prisoners in this facility makes up a significant percentage of El Salvador's entire population, which currently sits at just 6.36 million. Think about that for a second. Tens of thousands of gang members, all in one place, completely cut off from the outside world. No chance of escape, no influence over the streets they once ruled, no power left to wield. For Bukele, this is well-deserved justice. For the criminals inside, it's a living hell. To this day, El Salvador's mega jail has maintained a status as a 0% escape rate jail, meaning nobody can and never even tried escaping this jail. Meaning even if there's another Frank Morris living inside these cell blocks, he can't devise a plan to trick the guards. Knowing the fact that you can't escape will probably break your spirit, right? So how does it affect these inmates, especially the ones that committed unimaginable crimes? Do they get humble after stepping into CECOT? The answer is yes, and here's one of the prisoners who gave an interview while serving his time in this mega prison.
You gotta kill people, you gotta rob, you gotta do what you gotta do to survive.
You have to do those things.
Yeah, you gotta do that.
And if you didn't do those things, you wouldn't.
You wouldn't be a gangbanger.
This is a 41-year-old inmate named Marvin Ernesto Metano Vasquez. His tattoos underneath his shirt show that he was once a part of the MS-13 gang, which he joined back in 2004. But his career in crime began way before, when he was only 11 years old. His tough childhood led him to start robbing people and eventually getting involved with gangs and other criminals until he finally ended up with the MS-13, which not only stripped him of his morals, but also his humanity. It's worth knowing he was not only just a member, but also one of the high-ranking leaders. The inmate reveals another chilling detail about how if they wanted to join the MS gang, they must kill someone first, and that victim should be one of their family members. Now that's truly messed up. Once they join the gang, they just can't leave it, meaning even thinking about leaving is a treacherous act, and the punishment is only death, which won't be easy, because the MS-13 will cut your body into 13 pieces as a signature style. So, in other words, no escape, and keep on doing as the gang asks you to do. Marvin's poor decisions in life finally led him to end up in CECOT after the crackdown, and if that hadn't happened, he would have definitely kept on doing even more heinous crimes. He even justifies that he did what he did just to survive. But that's just an excuse. After all, there are millions of good ways to do it without hurting anyone.
Alex Alfredo Abre.
¿Tenías algún alias?
Sí, me decían el Goofy de directos.
¿Qué estructura criminal?
La MS-13.
Here's yet another interview with a prisoner named Alex Alfredo, also known by his gang name Goofy de Iracus. He's also a former member of the MS-13, which he joined back in 1993 when he was only around 31 years old, making him one of the oldest members of the gang. During his time with the MS gang, he did all sorts of illegal activities, from drug trafficking to murder to sexual assaults, making him no less bad than his fellow members. Alex is, without a doubt, one of the high-ranking members of the gang, but it's surprising even a man like him is a father.
En tu vida has como hablado con gente de 12, 13 años para llevarlos a la banda o no?
La verdad es el trabajo de un pandillero, reclutar miembros y llegarlos a ser buenos soldados dentro de la estructura criminal. Desde 13 años en inculcarles, instruirlos, adiestrarlos, prepararlos en todo ámbito, tanto como teórico y práctico.
But here's the hypocrisy. He kept his children out of this field of crime, while he was most definitely heavily involved in recruiting youngsters from other families. He and his fellow gang members manipulated the young minds to rebel against their parents, and possibly even kill them by their own hands if they posed a hindrance in joining the gang. The interviewer then asked Alex a very good question about whether he was religious, to which he replied that he was a Christian.
Si estuviéramos antes de Cristo, quizás estuviera muerto. No, seguro que estuviera muerto. Pero vino Cristo a morir por nuestros pecados y hoy vivimos por gracia.
The interviewer then asks, as a Christian, how he can commit such inhumane crimes and how he feels about it. Alex is out of words, but after this short pause, he says something so entitled that it might make you feel sick. He says that he asked God for forgiveness, and he has forgiven him, which makes him feel free now. That's just telling yourself that you did nothing wrong. But if that was the truth, why would he be rotting inside a jail cell? These gang members are heavily brainwashed, and from the beginning, it's made very clear that joining MS-13 is basically death, and you have to join even if it costs your life.
¿Cómo transcurre un día como interno del CECOT?
Respetar lo que las autoridades tienen establecido, que es conteo a las 6 de la mañana, formación para los alimentos 7 de la mañana, guardar silencio y comportarlo, respetar desde las 8 hasta las 6 de la tarde, luego a mediodía, si hay programas, ir a programas.
Alex then explains the daily routine of how they live in CECOT, which is, without a doubt, a kind of robotic life that is not only tough, but also mentally sickening. There's no TV, no connection to the outside environment, and in such an environment, each second passes slowly, making you even forget how old you are or how old your son is right now. This inmate, who's around 47 years old, had spent most of his youth working for the MS-13 gang and is now stuck in CECOT. During his reign, he committed so many murders that he lost count years ago. But this jail has humbled him and turned him into someone who now, instead of recruiting, spreads the message of not getting involved with these gangs because the consequences are unbearable. These interviews clearly show how effective Nayib Bukele's mega prison really is. Now I know what you're thinking right now, that CECOT is ruthless and everyone deserves a second or even a third chance. But here's something you don't know. Each and every person inside these massive cells had their fair share of chances. I said that in the very beginning, CECOT is the final destination, the place where you go when you ignore hundreds of chances to redeem yourself from the crime world. So all of them brought this upon themselves, and this is also the reason why El Salvador shifted from a murder capital to the region of the most successful dictatorship. Now here's a question for all of you. Can you survive living among these devils, even for a single day? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And this is all for today. Don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons. See you in the next one. Goodbye.